What I'm trying to create, honestly, is a world where people don't have to choose between doing well and doing good. I really felt, and I think it is a true feeling. We live in a capitalistic society, and I am not one who thinks making money is bad or wrong. I think it can be. There's a financial reality to life that is very real.
Every week here on More Than Profit, we explore the stories of leaders, entrepreneurs, and investors who have made a difference in the world while building successful businesses. We sit down with each guest and dive into their personal journey, their struggles and triumphs, and the lessons they've learned along the way. And as you know, one of the great pleasures of this show is the opportunity to actually sit down with some of my friends doing really cool things and to be able to share a bit more about them. Well, this episode is no different. Today, we're joined by my friend, Jenn Collins. Jenn is the president of Procure Impact, a company that enables corporations to align their vision and values with their purchasing power through a world-class technology procurement platform for mission-driven products. Jenn is proudly from Baltimore, Maryland. She's a former Division I basketball player and has built a career in the hospitality industry. About 10 years back, she went on a journey of sorts to better understand herself, more align her purpose and passions with the things that she does every day at work. Jenn is also a person of deep faith, and she shares how that perspective has aided her in viewing both her work and her role in society.
I'm born and raised in Baltimore. You can't see on computer screen, but I'm quite tall, so I'm 6'1". And I was an athlete growing up. I'm an only, and so I was raised primarily by my dad. My dad was the primary parent, and he was a teacher and a coach in Baltimore, kind of a legendary coach of basketball when I was younger, and he coaches golf now. But like super winning coach, he is very aligned in like how he was built and what he's doing in the world. He is the third of four kids, and he's just one of those teachers and coaches that really knows how to meet kids where they are, whether they need tough love or humor or just really being able to pull the best out of them. And I also was raised with his example of being very purposed in vocation. And so we didn't make a lot of money. We grew up quite poor, which is a bit of my journey story also. But I did grow up seeing him, wake up at 4 a.m. and watch game film and talk to the Baltimore Sun late at night and getting lesson plans and basketball plays prepared. And so he was a teacher and a coach in the inner city when I was little, and then we moved out to the county when I was a little bit older. So in the inner city, and then when I was in high school, I played in the inner city quite a bit. So I have this lived experience of spending quite a bit of time in the inner city of Baltimore. But then when we moved out to the county, he's been a teacher and a coach at a private school called St. Paul's for over 40 years. And so in that environment, when I was in school, I was kind of the poor kid in some richer environments. So I have a bit of this othering experience where in the inner city of Baltimore, I was a minority in predominantly Black communities. And then when I was at St. Paul's, I was kind of the poor kid in some richer environments. And I didn't have language for any of that at the time, but it really did inform kind of my adulthood and how I spend my time now. And then my mom, who I rarely talk about, but is becoming increasingly more important to talk about, I think, especially as I share my journey story. My mom suffers from mental health issues, and that is very clean language for a very confusing childhood. And what it meant a bunch of things, but it has meant some seasons of financial insecurity that have had some pretty big impacts on me. And so one of the driving forces for me as I was launching into my career was a quest for financial security. I've always been pretty altruistic in my heart, and Enneagram 1 wants to really see systems change and humanitarian good, things like that have always driven me. But I really needed to, for me, find financial security almost before I felt an allowance of working on those things. So that kind of guided my career. So clearly from Baltimore, proud Charm City girl, cheer loudly for the Ravens and the Orioles. Um, I'm also, I was a four sport athlete in high school. I grew up a swimmer. My dad swam in college, and also played basketball into college. And so right now is like a really fun time to be interviewing me because it's March Madness, and so
That's right.
I'm fairly sleep
That's right.
deprived, but it's great. And then what inspires me? I mean, goodness gracious.
Well, if we
Uh,
could pause, I'd actually
yeah,
love
go
to
ahead.
pause a little bit on, first off, thanks for sharing about your mom, because I do think it's helpful to hear those stories, because oftentimes we hear the good stories and we
Mhm.
don't. And I think the things that have shaped us are important for other people to know about. So thank you for sharing that.
Mhm.
I'm curious. I'm just curious why do you feel now that you're able to share that a little bit more?
Mm.
What is important to you to make sure that that's also a part of your story and your
Yeah.
upbringing as you talk about it?
Sure. Well, when you and I first met, I was doing work on opportunity zones at the Beck Center for Social Impact at Georgetown. And there I was leading a body of work on how our low income neighborhoods are developed and invested in or not, as the case may be. And so my personal journey story to that work, I could very easily kind of talk about my dad and my experience in the inner city of Baltimore, and it made a lot of sense. And my mom didn't need to be part of the story, quite frankly. There's also been a lot of evolution in my mom and I's relationship and things that have happened in her life. And well, I'm sure we'll talk about my journey to procure impact, but I was giving a keynote speech down in Austin in early February, and I needed to clarify my journey story into Procure Impact, which is still working with underestimated populations of people, but in a different way and in a different framing. And so, as I was wrestling through that speech, which was kind of a TEDx style talk, I was like, I don't want to talk about my mom. I don't want to talk about my mom. But I couldn't tell the story without talking about my mom because a lot of the through line in my work is all about the dignity of work. And why is the dignity of work so important to me? I had a 20-year career in the hospitality space where the dignity of work has always lived in the hospitality industry. You can start as a bellman or a sous chef. The hospitality industry is innately skills-based training and really rise to great levels of leadership and be able to provide for your family if that's what you wish to do, or just stay in the hospitality industry for a season and go on and do whatever else makes your heart beat. But I found so much resonance in the hospitality industry, and I'm grateful to still be working in it in a more adjacent capacity, but still there. And I couldn't tell the story of why the dignity of work was so important to me without telling the honest story of financial insecurity and the foundation that has imprinted on how I look at the world and why I've been in finance capacities my whole career. And, even when I structure business decisions, I think about things through a financial lens, and very much believe that we can do well and do good in for-profit ways and be incredibly impactful in for-profit ways, which is kind of if we talk about the world of impact investing or social impact work, or even how it intersects with philanthropy. I tend to My work has tended to have a lot of at least constituents that are in the for-profit space, and try to consult for. I just think there's tremendous impact in for-profit structures, and so a lot of which is untapped. Some of which is being unlocked, but a lot of which is untapped. And why that is so important to me, I just couldn't. I couldn't honestly tell the story without being honest about the fact that I've had real seasons of financial insecurity that have, aren't necessarily, aren't necessarily totally in the rear view mirror with my family and my mom. So it's just, yeah, it's like it's in there, so I can't ignore it.
Well, and Jen, I think the thing that's interesting is, as I run into people, you're so not alone, but how you can feel alone, like going, oh, I don't want to tell this story, but where going, all of us have, I mean, especially when it comes to family, where you just have these unsettling, things in your life that you want to push away, but it really is formed when you think about like your life, you go, it's all shaped you into being who you are and what drives you and those things. So again, like Bryce was saying, thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to tell the story. I don't want to live the story either, quite frankly. I mean, if we're being really honest,
Yeah, no.
I, I'm great. It's turned me into who I am, and there is a lot of gratitude for that. I wouldn't be who I. There's a lot of gratitude for that, but I mean, if we
Yeah.
really want to be honest, I'm not sure I would have chosen it. So
Mm,
Yeah,
yeah. Well,
that makes sense.
so then moving to kind of the other things that have shaped you. So obviously those are powerful and formative. But you are you're a dynamic person, and your passion for people and communities is palpable. So what inspires you? What kind of gets you going? Where did you find that in your path and in your journey as you were growing up?
yeah, I think this is going to sound really trite, but I've just been loved on in
Mm.
low income and underestimated communities of people really well. And I've had some experiences of grace that, and by that I mean getting these huge blessings that I could have never seen or even like put on a vision board or anything like that. There's been so much in my life that has been just blessings and surprises to the positive. So, growing up in the inner city and even in the St. Paul's environment, I mean, St. Paul's has been really wonderful to my family. My dad and I actually lived on campus. So St. Paul's is an old Southern plantation on 114 acres, and my dad and I lived in this little gatehouse that was at the entrance to this old Southern plantation. And I'm not even sure if it was used for housing back when it was a plantation. It's so small. I mean, it's like less than 1,000 square feet, and we did our laundry down at the gym, and my dad slept on the couch, and I slept in the bedroom, and it was really like, but we were on campus, and so we were very much a part of that community. I had keys to the gym, so that's what me and my friends did on Friday nights, and so just growing up in community and really being loved on, and then playing in the inner city, and also seeing my dad and my stepmom, who is really also an amazing blessing in my life. But the way they interact with those around them, St. Paul's is a wealthier private school. My father was always one who really lives equality. So we'll talk to a sixth grader the same way he would talk to the head of school at St. Paul's. And that was probably to the demise of some leadership at St. Paul's. But he really just, approached life with there's value in every person. And so, and my stepmom is an incredible golfer. She runs tour operations for the LPGA now, and so she's been in very influential environments, and she's the one who makes Rice Krispie treats for the cart barn staff and things like that. So, and that's just super normal for us. And
Awesome.
so to be able to and then I grew up in having spent time in the inner city, and then when I moved to New York after college and did some teaching and coaching in Harlem, and it's just being loved on really well and finding community in these areas. But then also having gone to an Ivy League school and having been in real estate finance for some large companies where access to capital, whether it be financial or social, was really at my fingertips. And I was in those communities too. I think a lot of my who am I has been trying to figure out how I can bridge those worlds. I know that there are creative, brilliant, spunky, driven, hardworking people in underestimated communities. And then in many ways, some of our richer, whiter Ivy League environments are almost overestimated in my in my experience. Sometimes, I mean, there's amazing humans there too, but it's been trying to figure out how to bridge that, how to bring them together, those looking for access and resources, and those who have it. And then I think going back to the who I am, like I am extroverted, I'm an only. So I am one who's my friends are my family. And so, and I don't know many other only children, but I do think that the other onlys that I know have a very wide network and community of people because we didn't have that. We didn't have a big community in the home, where you come from if you're one of four, six, five. I mean, I spent a lot of time in East Africa. Like they are fascinated with the fact that I am an only
That you're an
child. That
only
is
child.
completely, completely unheard of in any country in Africa. And so it's just it's really so I think it's using that also just extroversion and wanting to have friends and being genuinely curious about people's journey stories. But I think, who inspires me and what inspires me are just the people I've met. I mean, I distinctly remember Bryce, our first conversation. I remember exactly where I was at Georgetown. I was right by the hospital, and I was grabbing Starbucks coffee, and I was like, this is the most interesting man in the world. Like this is, this he gives the Dos Equis guy a run for his money, just in you and your background and we put together this investor council, which is full of really amazing people, and you were really really high on my list because you are so interesting, and so I think just
Well, thank
like
you.
my orbit of friends that I've been blessed with tend to be curious people, tend to be lifelong learners, tend to be those who are really trying to be brave and courageous with how they spend their time. I think those who really criticize by creating really inspire me. I um, I live in the DC area, so there's a lot of people who are really quick to criticize a lot, and there's a lot to criticize. Don't get me wrong, but I really, I really am most inspired by those who are like, okay, here's a problem, but we're going to action. I'm going to try to do something
Yeah.
and take whatever agency I have to do some good. So
Yeah,
those are
that's
the
great.
people who inspire me, and I'm fortunate to have a lot of them in my life.
So
Yeah.
it's interesting that when you said that, Jen, the criticize by creating, that's one of the quotes I have by you that I was going to ask you
Mhm.
about. So that makes a lot of sense. So yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah.
wow, really good.
That's actually that might be plagiarized. That might be a Mark Battersonism. I'm not sure, but I feel like it
Well,
could have come from him. He's the pastor of my church here in DC. So,
there's a good
hats off to
chance that
Pastor
he
Mark
won't
if
listen to
that was
this.
said by him.
Yeah, so it probably won't be listening
Just
to this.
claim it.
So yeah,
Just
so
name it and claim it.
it's
You got it,
yours.
Jen.
Yeah.
You
It's
never know.
yours.
He's a pretty forward-looking guy when it comes
There you
to
go. There you
how
go.
he's doing church in the world. So you never know.
Excellent.
In 2020, the Render competition was launched to make venture-style funding more accessible to early-stage startups. Well, the application window for this year's competition was just opened this month for the 4th annual Render Capital competition, a startup competition where we invest $100,000 into 8 startups each year. To learn more and apply to the 2023 Render competition, check out render.capital/competition. Now back to the episode. Well, Jen, so I know a lot about your story, obviously, because we've known each other for a while, and it's just fascinating because you're an achiever, you're a competitor, like
Yeah.
you are driven. Obviously, you went to Cornell, you played basketball, you went
Yeah.
into the hotel industry, spent 20 years kind of building a career in hospitality, but then I think like everybody, there was a moment, right? And I just want to there was a shift in you that kind of led to a question of who am I and what am I about?
Cool.
which I think I'd love for you to share a little bit about because I know that would be helpful because I think people get to that point around okay, asking these questions of who am I, what motivates me, how have I gotten to this place, and is this what I'm going to do with what I have been given? And
Yeah,
I know you really faced that in a very specific way several
I
years ago.
did.
Would you
I
care to share
did.
some about that?
I think, and now, I'm really fortunate to talk to other people who are kind of in that season, which can be hyper confusing and really scary. Uh, yeah, I think for me, it probably started. Well, the good thing is it wasn't just like one point of time. It was a season, and I can't tell this part of my story without talking. Like faith is a big part of my life, so I can't talk about this, even though we're on a More Than Profit podcast, without talking about God. But I would say it was around 2015. I had been at LaSalle for 5 years. And so it was a couple years in the making because I left LaSalle in May 1st, 2017 was my first day away from LaSalle. But so it was a couple years of just there's a couple things that happened. I read a book written by Mark Batterson, who we just talked about. It's one of he's a prolific author, but it's one of his lesser known books, and it's called Wild Goose Chase. And it talks about, it's all about the Holy Spirit. And the first chapter is titled Yawning Angels. And it asks the question, I wonder if angels get bored. And I was like, that question just like stopped me in my tracks. I was like, oh, I've never, this is a question I've never had before. I don't even really know what that means. And he was posing the question, like, if we really, believe in a higher power, and I call it God, other people call it other things, that's fine. But if we really believe in a benevolent kind of higher power, are we really living and praying like it? And I was like, well, I'm down here. I think a lot of people are like, oh, got mortgages and dependents and, all these responsibilities. And I'm sitting here being like, I don't have a mortgage or dependents. And I'm still like, am I really leading a life that is as big and as bold as it could be? So that was a book that was really catalytic to this phase starting out for me, or this season starting out for me. And as I was reading through the book, that book is battered and bruised. It was chucked across my bedroom multiple times because the still small voice kept saying, do you have the guts to take a year off? Do you have the guts to take a year off? And to your point, Bryce, I was an Ivy League educated Division I athlete. I was hell bent on being a successful businesswoman, in New York, walking down the street with like a latte in one hand and my Birkin bag in the other, and going to my corner office, and and that's really this vision that drove me for a long time. And so to take my foot off the accelerator of that, I mean, I kind of got there, which was great. And but it was like, well, now what? So that book was a catalyst. And then another thing that was a catalyst was kind of funny because it was being nominated for a fellowship that I didn't end up getting. And so I was nominated for the Henry Crown Fellowship through the Aspen Institute. So the Aspen Institute is a big think tank, like convener of multiple incredible fellowships, based here in DC, but they do work all over the globe. And the Henry Crown Fellowship is kind of their pinnacle fellowship. And I was nominated by a friend who also hired me at the Beck Center. And so she's been an amazing door opener in my life and just champion of me and my career. And she nominated me for this fellowship. I didn't know what it was. Sonal and I met each other at a mindfulness retreat. We were mutually pissed off at the same thing, and so we became fast friends. And yeah, so we got to know each other, and she's like, I think this would be a really good fit. And the Crown Fellowship hits people when they're at an inflection point in their life, and it targets people in kind of my age range. I think it's like the 30 to 45 kind of age group. And it was amazing. It was something I didn't know was even available or out there. But what I did is I tried to contact and connect with every person I could find that had been a Crown Fellow.
Hmm.
And I was cold calling. I put my extroversion to work. I basically reached out to, every female thinking that they would be, friendly I just wanted to know what their experience of this fellowship was like. So it was just a great reason to enter into conversation with people. And I ended up talking to probably 15 Crown Fellows. And this fellowship is full, it's a mosaic of incredible people. I mean, the head of the Navy SEALs to politicians to the CEO of Beyond Meat. Like, it is really, really incredible people. And those conversations helped me realize I just don't know what I don't know, which is a trite saying, but I had been about 20 years in the hospitality space. I had an expertise, if you will, in especially hotel asset management, but really, on the principal side of hotel ownership. I went to the hotel school at Cornell, and I just didn't know. I talked to all these other people who had amazing journey stories to their careers and were doing all these other things, and I had never even thought of before. And so that was curious to me. So it was a combination of those two catalysts that where I did take a year off, and my year ended up being 15 months, which is important because if anybody feels prompted to take a year off and you don't have all of this wrapped up with a pretty little bow at the 12-month mark, it's a bathroom floor moment. But I yeah, I took a year off starting May 1st, 2017, and then I re-engaged in vocation for compensation uh, with through the Beck Center, where I started in the fall of 2018. And my whole prayer, mantra, whatever you want to call it, during that 15 months off was how can my head and my heart work closely together for the most explosive good? That's what I was trying to figure out. And I couldn't see it. I couldn't see it, and I was very fortunate financially to be able to take that much time off. But it was amazing. I mean, the 20-year run up to that time, I could tell you maybe like 5 trips I had been on, but I can tell you every month what I did in those 15 months. It's kind of like
That's
how you
powerful.
can you can remember kind of every year of high school, every year of college, because it's meaningful and prescriptive in that way. And in
Yeah.
adulthood, it all kind of runs together. For parents, you can probably mark a lot with your kids, but I'm not a parent to biological kids. So anyway, so yeah, that was the catalyst. I took 15 months off and had
But even now, like as you've come back,
yeah,
one, you didn't go right back into
mm-mm,
hospitality.
nope,
You went to Beck. You went to Lisk for a little while.
yep,
You're now at Procure Impact, which we'll
hmm
talk about here in a second. But yeah, talk to us about that because I think you came back with obviously a renewed passion to align your head and your heart, uh,
yeah.
and for good. But that can be difficult, right? I mean, one, finding the right
Mhm.
organizations, getting your foot in the door, um, and then also catalyzing the change that you want to see in the world within organizations. And then, so talk to us about how that made you feel as you kind of were shifting back and forth between different things as you reemerged into
Yeah,
paid
it's
work,
been
so to speak.
it's a great question. I think it's kind of somewhere between the miracles and the madness. The highs have been highs and the lows have been low. Um, the body of work at Beck was really amazing, and it wasn't something that I proactively sought. It was a point in time where opportunity zones had been the legislation had been passed, and where the Beck Center really wanted to use their influence to try to. There was no impact in the legislation, as you know, so it was a point in time. I knew that body of work was only going to be a couple years because we were trying to shape shift a field towards positive social outcomes using the influence that we had. And so that was an answer to the prayer mantra of how can I use my head and my heart. Real estate was the first movers in OZs, as you know, and so to use my real estate background and a deep network in for-profit real estate developers who were getting into opportunity zones, but also being one who spent a lot of time in census tracts that had been, or in communities that had been designated as opportunity zones, was a unique fit to be able to lead that work because I genuinely spent time in those communities, but had the access to capital real estate networks that were starting to invest in those communities, oftentimes for the first time. And so I was a helpful translator between those two worlds. And that was just, it was an opportunistic timing thing. And then Maurice Jones courted me out. I mean, I knew the Beck Center work was going to be a couple of years. And Maurice, if anybody has ever met Maurice Jones at Lisk, he is a rocket ship of a leader. And he he and I were speaking at Stanford at the same time. This is how we first came to know of each other. And I will never forget it. Maurice was on stage talking about opportunity zones, uh, and there was probably 3,000 people in this room at Stanford, and there's a lot of conversation swell around opportunity zones, as you know. And Maurice talk on stage, and he's the CEO of Lisk at the time, and he says, we're at this really fancy university, and there's a ton of people here, and he goes, I need 25 welders in Anacostia on Tuesday. Like, real ask. Who can solve that problem for me? And I was like, that guy. Like, that guy knows the right questions to ask and like the real boots on the ground problems that we should be solving. And so I met him for coffee to court him to be on our investor council that you were also on, Bryce. And he flipped the script on me in that coffee meeting, and he said, put together your ideal job description and send it to me.
Hmm.
Actually, before he said that, he said, I want to hire your ambition, which is basically like you had me at hello, right? And so I was still pretty early. It was right when we were forming the investor council, so I was still pretty early at Georgetown. But I was like, this is a conversation worth continuing anyway.
Mm-hmm.
And so he asked me to put my ideal job description together, and I did actually put 10 ideas together for him to noodle on because Lisk is amazing and big and does a bunch of things, and I thought I could be helpful in a myriad of ways. And so started with them out of Georgetown and was leading
Yeah.
enterprise operations and kind of did that. And but
Well, I'm curious.
yeah, go ahead.
I am. Well, no, I was curious. Here you had this like 20-year career in hospitality, top of your game. Like you said, the businesswoman in New York, walking down with a latte in one hand, your purse in the other, and then you reemerge and you kind of enter this world of kind of the nonprofit space, and then but also the uncertainty also of that pathway. What was that like? What was that like personally for you? Like obviously you enjoyed the work and you were passionate. You were more, I would say, awakened to kind of your purpose and how to realize that on the world. But there was a lot of uncertainty there, and so
especially with your financial security, like where like
yeah,
for 20 years you're building this persona and focus, and then to change that. So yeah, no, that's a good question, Bryce. So yes.
Yeah, nonprofits and private equity, different pay scale.
Yeah. Yeah.
so yeah, but and then where did you find your center on that? Because to what Brian said, like you grew up with financial insecurity, and so that became a direction for you, which is I need financial security,
Yeah.
and I want to have an impact on the world. And then you left this amazing career, doing amazing things, and are now chasing after your purpose where there isn't as much, at least at the outset, financial stability.
Sure. Well, there's a couple different things in that. I was definitely like square in my purpose working on opportunity zones. But I don't want to discount how much I was also in my purpose in the hospitality space. Like I'm wired for work. So I loved
Yeah, no doubt.
absolutely every single day that I worked in the hospitality space. And so many people, when I took a year off, were like, oh my gosh, how do you do this? How do I do this? And I'm like, this is terrifying for me. Like, not terrifying, but like, it sucks too, because I really like working and like, I'm not getting hundreds of emails a day. And how do you handle that? And it's I think it was working on other facets of me personally, but it was not something that I was like, oh yeah, I can just, chill and eat bonbons and hang out. Like, no, it's not cool. So taking a year off it was full of miracles, but it was really hard. Really, really, really hard. And then also some financial things, happened that were experiences of grace. Like me getting into Cornell was an experience of grace. It was something that my dad had a player who put us in touch with the coaches. Like I never in a million years thought I would ever go to an Ivy League school. And I had no idea what the hotel school was at the time. So there are these just like surprises to the positive. But one of the things that happened, financially was so I was working at LaSalle's publicly traded company, and when you have like future forward stock vests when you work for a publicly traded company, and there was a few in the future that I was like, okay, talking really honest conversations with the LaSalle guys about me leaving, and I in my mind was like, I'm just gonna forego these stock vests in the future, and they actually vested me when I left, which was huge.
Wow.
I've never actually heard of that happening before. So spiritually, I kind of feel like I feel like faith is kind of a go set ready thing. It's not a ready set go thing. You have to act. It's like I hate the term leap and the net appears, but it was kind of like you have to take the step of faith, and then that's faith. And I felt like God was like, I got you. Like I know how you're wired. I knit you together this way. I know what your triggers are. I know what you're afraid of, and I've got you. And so that was just a surprising, financial benefit to me that
Mm.
I wasn't expecting or planning for. And then I had a ton of those even throughout my year. I mean, people talk about, oh, I just get this check in the mail from like this returned parking ticket that I paid, but turns out I didn't need to. Like that stuff happened, and there's no explanation for it. But I felt like it was this continual, like, I got you. Like this is gonna be fine. Now, granted, I was a good financial steward, saved a ton in that 20-year career, and that is privilege and blessing and hard work,
Yeah,
but like not
but
every
that's it.
I really, really, really want to be careful about that because it is like
Well, it's
privilege
it's
to its
both
max.
and. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, it's both, right? I mean, privileged, you know, financial security, stewardship, like planning, that matters, but to your point, these experiences of grace, and which helps me understand kind of like, okay, great. So when you reemerge and kind of entered the workforce, the the fact that like there was maybe some uncertainty in what was next and what was next, you became okay with that over the course of your 15 months off. Like, okay, I'm going to be taken care of. I'm going to be good, which is really cool because now, fast forward, you did the Beck Center, you've done the LISC thing, you've done some consulting, but you're now the president of a new firm called Procure Impact, which I think, from what I gather, seems to be kind of at the sweet spot of kind of your 20-year background in the hospitality space and a pursuit of impact. So talk to us about that, because I know it's a relatively new organization and your role there and what you guys are hoping to accomplish as you look to the future.
Sure. So I think for the past 5 years, as I've gone through this transition period, and I think you alluded to it too. I think Richard Rohr talks about it in Falling Upward. I think various Brookses have talked about it. Arthur or David, right, about Second Mountain and from strength to strength. And so That has been my experience. That season though has been about 5 years for me. I've held various roles, but I do think that transition from first half of life to second half of life has been a handful of years actually. It wasn't just a point in time for me. But through the past 5 years have worked in various capacities on how to braid together hospitality and impact. I learned a lot more about impact at the Beck Center. I was fortunate to be colleagues with industry pioneers in social impact, those who defined what it was, have put frameworks together for it. So I was able to contribute, but I was also able to learn a ton and just also become friends and colleagues with a lot of prominent people in the space of impact. And then having an expertise in hospitality, it was like trying to figure out, and I worked in a bunch of capacities on how to braid those two together. So it was because I was doing the braiding of that work together, I met the founder of Procure Impact for coffee last summer. Her name's Lauren McCann. She's also a rocket ship human. Amazing, 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 amazing person. She also gives the Dos Equis guy a run for his money on the most interesting person in the world. She has been the lead singer of a cover band. She is
Awesome.
just she used to be in manufacturing. She has run the largest social venture towards anti-poverty efforts in the country. She is amazing, and we met for coffee. So she reached out to me on LinkedIn, and I never check my LinkedIn messages, which I probably shouldn't say on a podcast if you're going to ask me, like, how do people get in touch with me? But I historically hadn't read a lot of LinkedIn mail. And for some reason last summer I did, read her email to me. She told me what she was building at Procure Impact, and I agreed to meet her for coffee unapologetically because I was trying to finagle my way onto her advisory board because I was like, oh my gosh, what she is building is such a smart business idea. And what that is it's creating a B2B marketplace, a tech-enabled B2B marketplace that connects what are called employment social enterprises to corporate partners. So there are hundreds of employment social enterprises across the country. I didn't know that they existed, honestly, a year ago. But Lauren has relationships with many of them because she used to run a large social venture towards anti-poverty efforts. So she was grant funding and vetting a lot of these social ventures from that perspective. She also has a background in manufacturing, so her aha kind of came with the juxtaposition of her background and noticing that these employment social enterprises oftentimes have a B2C strategy, but not a B2B strategy. So, what an employment social enterprise is, or at least the ones we work with, is they work with communities of people who have experienced a barrier to work. So, women who have been sex trafficked or abused, adults with disabilities, veterans, refugees, etc. And they provide the social and wraparound services for these communities of people to become, to thrive. And oftentimes they have a workforce component where they make things. So jewelry, these earrings are actually from Worthy Co., which is a social enterprise that we work with down in Fort Worth, Texas. They employ and empower women coming out of trafficking situations. But it's jewelry, coffee, snacks, art, furniture. They make all sorts of stuff. And so but they don't have a ton of relationships with corporate buyers. They're trying to sell predominantly on, the Etsy's of the world or Shopify to conscious consumers like you or I who might want to buy fun earrings for their girlfriends and purchase with purpose. But they don't have the relationships with larger corporate partners who are buying what they make. And the hospitality industry happens to be a really big sandbox that buys what the social enterprises are making already. So, from a social enterprise perspective, we're building a tech platform where we are amplifying their sales and distribution so they can do more of the life-changing hard work that they're doing already. And then on the corporate side, the corporate buyer is able to achieve ESG goals or perhaps DEI initiatives or amplify out supplier diversity, which is something that everybody's trying to figure out but is really hard to do. So I've been in these corporate America seats trying to purchase with purpose and know that it's really hard and complicated and disjointed. And so Procure Impact's creating an easy button to do it. And so I just think it's a super smart business model and I wanted to be involved. So I came on as an advisor in the fourth quarter of last year, and then Lauren invited me to help, build it with her and the team, and came on as president in January, and it's just amazing.
Very exciting.
That's awesome. That's really exciting. That's really exciting. Well, I think, Jenn, your life is amazing, and I'm thankful, one, for your willingness to share the totality of your story, the good, the bad, and the ugly, and the journey that you had, kind of stepping back from being a high-powered businesswoman to now pursuing a life of impact, and still be a high-powered businesswoman, which is awesome. So I'd love, I don't normally do this, but what would you tell a younger version of yourself if you could look back? What would be one thing you would tell them as they're kind of setting out on their career? Like if you were just graduating from Cornell, what was the advice that you wish you had heard as you were stepping into New York and the jobs that you pursued?
I don't think I would have done anything differently. And I don't think I would have done anything differently. What I'm trying to create, honestly, is a world where people don't have to choose between doing well and doing good. I really felt, and I think it is a true feeling. We live in a capitalistic society, and I am not one who thinks making money is bad or wrong. I think it can be, there's a financial reality to life that is very real. And so it's why I love Procure Impact is transforming lives to the dignity of work. I mean, that is our tagline and our mission. And but I did feel like for me that I kind of had to go big on the financial security piece before I was able to even consider anything in impact or anything a little bit more heart forward. And I would like to leave a legacy where people, especially women, don't have to choose. Feel like they can, from the gate, out of the gate, really be able to bring all their strengths and giftings to the table. Because I think corporate America needs heart forward leaders, and I know that the world of nonprofits and philanthropy needs folks with high business acumen. And I don't know, I mean, maybe I'm wrong in my mindset on that, but I felt like they were siloed when I was younger in my career. I felt maybe there was pathways that I didn't know about where I could have kind of led with my head and my heart earlier in my career. It's just not the way it worked out. But I don't know of an alternative pathway that I was considering or that was interesting to me. But I do think I would encourage anybody, me included, younger in my life, to just be brave. I do think that where I think miracles happen when you're brave with your life, and I think it probably means a life of like really high highs and really low lows, but so it's not for the faint of heart. And I also am saying that as a cisgender white female with who is not married with no children. So there's a lot. There's a different lens. There's many different lenses and different family structures and different responsibilities. But I've never regretted anything. I think if I don't live with regret, but I think if anybody were gonna, any regret I would voice would be, oh, I didn't try this, or I wasn't brave there.
Thanks for listening to this episode of More Than Profit. If you'd like to learn more about Procure Impact, please check out procureimpact.us. To stay up to date with More Than Profit, make sure to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. And while you're there, drop us a review so others can find us as well. And don't forget to check out our new show's website at morethanprofit.fm, where we have more added content and past episodes. You can also learn more about what's ahead by following us on Twitter at listen_MTP or on Instagram at More Than Profit Podcast. More Than Profit is a production of Access Ventures. Executive producers are Bryce Butler and Brian McKay. Production and operations by Crystal Esquivel and Par Nordgren. Design is by Olivia Allison. Production assistance provided by Render PDC. And our theme music today was No Man's Land by Slapstorm. I'm Bryce Butler, and you've been listening to More Than Profit.